Good day, everyone. Today we're covering Chapter 3, and we're going to start off with paragraph 20. When we make thinking an object of observation, we add to the other observed contents of the world something which usually escapes our attention. But the way we stand in relation to the other things is in no way altered. We add to the number of objects of observation, but not to the number of methods. While we are observing the other things, there enters among the processes of the world, among which I now include observation, one process which is overlooked. Something is present which is different from all other processes, something which is not taken into account. But when I observe my own thinking, no such neglected element is present. For what now hovers in the background is once more just thinking itself. The object of observation is qualitatively identical with the activity directed upon it. This is another characteristic feature of thinking. When we make it an object of observation, we are not compelled to do so with the help of something qualitatively different, but can remain within the same element. And the summary for that is, thinking has the unique characteristic in that observing thinking requires the actual act of thinking itself. So that's what he means when he talks about the object of observation is qualitatively identical with the activity directed upon it. Okay, so I think he does go on a lot about how thinking needs to be observed, and so he does. As I mentioned before, he does repeat himself a lot. The ideas is very similar in each of these paragraphs, and the main point is obviously to observe your thinking and whatnot. So let's move on to 21. When I weave an independently given object into my thinking, I transcend my observation, and the question arises, what right have I to do this? Why do I not simply let the object impress itself upon me? How is it possible for my thinking to be related to the object? These are questions which everyone must put to himself who reflects on his own thought processes. But all these questions cease to exist when we think about thinking itself. We then add nothing to our thinking that is foreign to it, and therefore have no need to justify any such addition. And I think he makes a good point when you observe things, you do have these questions in your mind, like when you're thinking about things, like what right do you have to do it? Why not just let things go as they please or whatnot? And how when you think about things, it does form a connection, and that's why he talks more about this as well. But when you're thinking about things, it's sort of thinking has a uniting quality to it. So it's thinking is obviously a very important plays a very important role in this process of how we gather knowledge. And these questions, I think, are very important questions that he brings up when we observe the world and when we try to gain knowledge. I mean, these are questions any individual who thinks about how do we know things, thinks about, because what role do we have in things as well? Where do we fit in this world? And these are all very good questions. And the summary we have for that is, we do not need to justify our thinking about thinking. Paragraph 22 is Schelling says to know nature means to create nature. If we take these words of this bold nature philosopher literally, we shall have to renounce forever all hope of gaining knowledge of nature. For nature is there already, and in order to create it a second time, we must first know the principles according to which it has originated. From the nature that already exists, we should have to borrow or crib the fundamental principles for the nature we want to begin by creating. This borrowing, which would have to precede the creating, would, however, mean knowing nature, and this would still be so even if after the borrowing no creation were to take place. The only kind of nature we could create without first having knowledge of it would be a nature that does not yet exist. And the summary we have for that: Schelling's statement, "to know nature is to create nature," cannot be taken literally, since nature already exists. The only kind of nature that one could create without previously knowing it would be a nature that did not yet exist. Why would you want to even create nature anyways? It's been done. Do something new. That's just my little joke there. Okay, we're going to move on to 23. What is impossible for us with regard to nature, namely, creating knowing, we achieve in the case of thinking. Were we to refrain from thinking until we had first gained knowledge of it, we would never come to it at all. We must resolutely plunge right into the activity of thinking, so that afterwards, by observing what we have done, we may gain knowledge of it. For the observation of thinking, we ourselves first create an object. The presence of all other objects is taken care of without any activity on our part. And the summary for 23 is: we gain knowledge of thinking by creating thinking and then observing it. What's interesting about this is that thinking is, as he keeps saying, is thinking is different from all other objects that we perceive in the world, because we're creating it ourselves. We're doing our own thinking, and we're making our own objects of observation when we're thinking. And that's a very important point as well. I think I'm going to stop it there. So hopefully this was useful for you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.